Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have part one of a two-part series featuring the November Simon Says Stamp Kit for 2018, and it's called Thanks and Leaves. And as of filming, this kit is still available. I will have it listed down below along with all the individual items that come in the kit. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside the kit. As always, the kit is going to come with some candy. I always set those aside and use that while I'm crafting. This one comes with one pack of 6 Tim Holtz Ideology butterfly adornments, and they're all different. They're pretty. I think if you did put one on a card, you'd definitely have to put some extra postage on there, but these would be really beautiful for some mixed media projects. I plan to do a canvas or two with these. I actually didn't use them. I'm mad at myself for that, but they are really pretty. It also comes with one booklet of Tim Holtz Ideology Snarky Small Talk stickers, and there are so many in here. There's 218 stickers. You could do some fun stuff with that as well. It comes with one pack of Simon Says Stamp bronze sequins. It comes with 2 Simon Says Stamp medium white tags, 2 Simon Says Stamp 4-bar craft envelopes, and 1 Simon Says Stamp metallic orange peel envelope. This stamp set is gorgeous. It's a 6x8 clear stamp set called Thanks and Leaves, and it has so many beautiful sentiments. An idea sheet, as always. And this one comes with a 100-pound cardstock in the colors orange peel, ivory, green leaf, and those are Simon Says Stamp, and then 1 Nina 100-pound smooth desert storm cardstock. For my first card, I am going to use some of that orange peel cardstock. I have that trimmed down to 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and I'm going to score that at 5 1/2 inches to make it a top folding A2 size card. And I want to do a little sponging on the front. Typically, I don't like to use too much outside of what comes in the kit, but I could not resist using the Simon Says Stamp Harvest stencil. So I'm just going to tack that down with some washi tape. And I've got it off to the side because I'm going to do more of my focus on that lower left-hand corner. And I'll just tack that down. And then I'm going to grab a Distress ink in Spiced Marmalade. And I'm using my mini ink blending tool, and I am just sponging that all over that lower corner. And I can kind of lift it up. I have it put down like a flap so that I can see where my coverage is. And then I can see if I like what I've done. And I'll just keep sponging that until I'm happy with it. I originally was going to try and use a Distress Oxide, but I figured this Spice Marmalade just really popped on there. And so I grabbed that in just my regular Distress inks. I have a piece of that Nina cardstock from the kit. I was going to cut it, and as you can see, I have a giant cut down the side there. So I figured, well, we'll just use this to cut out my pieces. So I'm stamping some of those leaves using some of the Distress Oxide inks. And I stamped that first leaf using some aged mahogany. And then I'll clean that off, and I will move on to some forest moss, and then I'll move on to some vintage photo. I'm doing this kit a little bit differently. Typically, if you have watched any of my videos where I use the Simon Says Stamp kits, or any kits for that matter, I like to do it in 2 parts, and I will do 4 cards per part. But this kit really screamed mixed media to me. And so I'm doing 4 cards in this first part, and then the second part is actually going to be a mixed media project. So that will be a little different for me for what you typically see anyway, but I do love mixed media, and so you get to see some of that in action. So if you're not into that, I guess I would say don't watch part 2, but you might actually find some stuff that you enjoy. So I would say go ahead and keep your eye out for part 2 because you might really, really enjoy it. So I fussy cut all of those images out, and now I'm just tacking those down using some Tombow Mono Multi adhesive. And I'm just there's no real rhyme or reason to how I put them down. I just stuck them down there on that corner, and then I'm going to trim off the excess once I have that dried a little bit. And then I'm going to grab one of those snarky comments, and this one says, "I miss you like an idiot misses the point." We live away from our family and friends most of the time, so I thought that would be very fitting. And I'm going to grab my T-ruler so that I don't screw up how I've got that put on the front of my card. And then I will snip off the excess. And then as a final bit of embellishment, I'm going to grab my Nuvo Crystal Drops in the color Bright Gold. I thought about using the Autumn Red, But then I thought the bright gold would really pop on there. And if I'd really been thinking, I probably would have used the sequins that came in the kit, but I didn't grab them. I don't know why I didn't grab them. I didn't even use them at all. They're really pretty. I don't know why I didn't use them. So anyway, that will finish off card number 1 here once I'm done tapping those down. For card number 2, I wanted to show you that you can make a wreath card without all the fancy gadgets that are out there right now. And so I have a piece of the white cardstock that came in the kit, and I scored that at 5.5 inches. And I am using just one of my circle dies. This is actually one of the Spellbinders Nestability circle dies, and I'm just tracing around that lightly with a pencil. I'm going to use that as a guide for my stamping. Like I said, I know there's a lot of wonderful gadgets out there that can help make wreaths, and those are wonderful, I'm sure. I don't own any, but I thought this would be kind of fun to try and make my own wreath. So I'm grabbing some of those Distress Oxide inks in those same colors that I've used before, and I'm just going to stamp around that guide that I have. And this one is the Aged Mahogany. I've said this before in other kits. I like to try and stick to the same color palette while I'm making cards from a kit, because I sometimes give those out as gifts if I need a gift quickly. And when they are kind of the same color palette, then it's easier to grab a stack of cards and give those as a gift. So now I'm moving on to that Forest Moss and the Distress Oxide, and I'm just stamping around that guide. It starts to look a little wonky, but you can always fix that just by more stamping. So now I've moved on to the Fossilized Amber. I've introduced that's a new color. I didn't use that on the last card. And I'll stamp this next leaf around using that. And I'm only doing it about 3 times. And then I'll move on to Spiced Marmalade in the, that might be Carved Pumpkin actually. I think that one is Carved Pumpkin. Nope, that's Spiced Marmalade. That was Spiced Marmalade that I used, and now I'm using the Vintage Photo to stamp out another leaf. And I'm just kind of filling in this wreath the best that I can. Then I end up going back to the Forest Moss for another small leaf just to add a little bit of filler in certain parts where it looked like it was a little bit blank. To stamp out my sentiment, I'm going to grab my Mini Misty, and I just have a scrap of white cardstock, and I am going to stamp using my Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I'll do that a couple of times. I had a friend recently come over, and she said she wanted to see my craft area, and I showed her, and she's like, gosh, it just looks so much bigger when you're filming. And I said, well, yeah, of course. I have to try and make it look bigger when I really only have about 2 square foot of coverage to stamp with. Yeah, it's a mess all around this desk, as you can clearly tell. So one of these days I should clean that up a little bit better. But, you know, anyway, for my sentiment, I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut around that. And I am going to heat set, because this is Distress Oxide inks, I'm going to heat set that ink to make sure that's good and dry, because you can see my guide through that ink. And so I have grabbed some of my plastic eraser from Staedtler, and I will link that down below. It worked like a dream to erase the guide that I had put down. So that was fantastic. And I've covered the back of my sentiment with some foam tape, and I'm going to adhere that down. And then I'm going to grab some Nouveau Crystal drops in the color Autumn Red. I thought that would be a wonderful little touch to make it look like little berries. And I'll just randomly put those onto my wreath. And when I'm done with that, that's going to finish off card number 2. Easy peasy. Card number 3 is a really easy one that could be very easily duplicated, and I'm hoping these are still available. These are the Lawn Fawn Fundamentals or Fondamentals note cards in the color Butternut, and I have a couple packs of those, and I'm telling you, they're really cool because they have that, I guess, what do you call that? That tree background or bark looking background, and so they're perfect for like fall thank yous. And so I have a piece of cardstock that I'm going to trim down, but I'm just going to make a thank you card. And I love the thank you in this set. I know I'm going to go back and use this thank you over and over and over again because I love the size of it. It's just really, it's big, it's pretty. I love the script. And so I'm stamping that out using the Memento Tuxedo black ink a couple of times to make sure that it's good and crisp. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to trim that down to fit on the front of my note card. So I've got my Fiskars paper trimmer, wire trimmer there, and I've trimmed that down, and then I'm going to use the scrap of that cardstock, what's left of it, to stamp out some leaves, just 3 leaves. This is going to be a very simple thank you, and it's the size of the 4-bar, so it'll fit into one of the little craft envelopes that comes in the kit. So once again, I am using the Distress Oxide ink colors in Aged Mahogany and Forest Moss and also Vintage Photo. I thought these were very pretty fall colors, and these worked out really well for my color palette this whole time. And once I'm done stamping all 3 of those, I'm going to fussy cut those out, and then I'm going to use some foam tape on the back of my sentiment panel. Then I'll just take off that release paper, and using my glass mat, I will align that so that it's as straight as possible, for me anyway, onto my note card. And to adhere my leaves, I'm just going to use some craft tacky glue. I was trying to fit that underneath, and then I was like, okay, Cass, you can trim this down. So I finally grabbed my scissors and trimmed that down, and then I'm able to get it adhered exactly how I want it to be adhered. And then I go ahead and I trim down the other leaf that is used, or that I use the Aged Mahogany on, and then I will adhere that using that same craft tacky glue. And then I'll adhere that last leaf on the other side. And I could have used some foam tape on the top, but I just decided I would make it look like it is just laying on top like that. And once I'm done there, I'll trim off the excess. And then I'm going to grab one of those 4-bar envelopes, and I'm going to stamp those same leaves using those exact same colors just on that bottom left corner. And then that will finish off this card. But I'll tell you, you could get a bunch of these and have a bunch of really cute thank yous all lined up for you. Really easy. I guess I better get thinking about that. I have another graduate getting ready to graduate this next summer. So there you go. That will finish off card number 3. Love it. Card number 4 is going to be a little bit more involved in this case. I am going to do some ink smushing, and I'm going to use one of the tags that came in the kit. So I have my craft mat down on my glass mat, and I'm going to smush a few of those Distress Oxide inks on there. And I'm not worried about making brown because, well, brown is a fall color, so it works for me. I wasn't sure how the ink smushing was going to go on these particular tags. These are from Simon Says Stamp, so they're not like the Tim Holtz Ideology craft tags that I have used before, and so I wasn't sure how these would work, and I thought they worked fine. They didn't warp the paper too much. They work pretty well with mixed media. I will say that these colors muted back quite a lot, which is kind of the case for Distress Oxide inks anyway, but I think they muted back quite a bit more than they normally do. So after I was done doing all my ink smushing and drying and everything like that, I went ahead and pulled out my mini ink blending tool, and I went ahead and just blended those colors that I had used, which are the colors I've used the whole time: Forest Moss, Aged Mahogany, and the Fossilized Amber, and I just blend those right onto the front of that, and I feel like that kind of made the colors in the background pop just a little bit more. And so I did that all over that tag, and then got the results that I was kind of hoping for. So I still have some of that ink smushing in the background with the little droplets, and then I also have some of that vibrancy by just doing the blending over the top. For my card base, I'm using some of that Neenah cardstock. This is the Desert Storm that came in the kit, and I have that scored at 5.5 inches. For my sentiment, I'm going to use just some cream cardstock that I had in my stash, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment actually using another Memento ink, but this one is the Espresso. What is that one? That is the Espresso Truffle, or I believe. Yes. Espresso Truffle, and it is a beautiful dark brown, so it's a little bit deeper than a chocolate brown, but not quite as dark as a black. For my smaller sentiment, I just grabbed some basically like a magenta cardstock that I had in my stash. And I ended up stamping it twice because I didn't get it straight. But I stamped that using the Versamark ink, and then I covered that using some Detail white embossing powder. And then I heat set that till it melted. And then I'm just going to use my wire trimmer to trim that down very thin. I will adhere my tag using a tape runner. And I avoided the hole because I wasn't sure if I wanted to actually tie a knot on the top there. And then I used that same Memento truffle ink, and then I splattered that using my splatter box and some water and an ink brush, or a paintbrush. I taped down my sentiment using that same craft tacky glue, and then off screen I stamped a bunch of different leaves and then fussy cut those out, and now I'm adhering those using that same craft tacky glue that I've been using this whole time. And I use the exact same colors that I have had this whole time as well. And I'm just putting those around that family sentiment. Family is everything. And then I will take my final sentiment, the little strip, and then I'm going to glue that down on top. And I thought that turned out pretty cute. And then for my sentiment, so this sentiment was way too long for a top folding A2 size card the way I have this one. And so I am covering up part of the sentiment with a post-it tape, inking up the part that I do want, pulling off that post-it tape, and then stamping the sentiment that I want. And then I will clean that off really, really well. I will move my sentiment, what is left that I need to stamp, and do the exact same thing with that ink. And when I have that inked up as well as I want, I will stamp that right below what I already stamped. And that says, "So happy you are family." And then with those last 3 leaves, I will go ahead and put those on the inside using that same craft tacky glue. And that'll finish off the inside. And for a last bit, I decide to put a bow. It needed something on the top. So I will take some brown ribbon that I had just sitting on my desk, and I'm going to make a bow out of that. And the only way to do this is just by practice. I have made so many bows in my lifetime that I'm not too bad at it now. So I'll adhere that using that same craft tacky glue, because that will keep it in place the best. And then that's going to finish off this card. I like that one. So let's go ahead and take a look at these 4 cards that I made for this first series here. This is part 1 of part 2. I love hearing which one of these cards is your favorite. That's like my favorite part of making all these cards. I appreciate you subscribing. I appreciate you leaving some love. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by.